Hi everyone, it's Jan with What You Make It, and I am back to share with you the process for putting the journal together that I have made out of these jelly prints that we made last time. And if you missed us making those prints, just click on that video recording. It'll take you over to that video so you can see how we did that. So you see we had the two different kinds. We made the card with the one on the right, and then I had all these wonderful cloth prints and I made them into this Christmas journal. So the prints were 6 by 6 and my journal is going to be a little bit bigger than that, and so I decided that I would do some hand stitching and make it almost like a little quilt, a little art quilt out of that. So I got my embroidery threads and I got some sequins and I just did a little basic hand sewing on each of those pieces. But to get to that point, I took a piece of felt that was, I cut it just a little bit bigger with the pinked edges because I'm not sewing this print into the journal. I'm just going to sew it onto the front of it. So the first thing I did was I just used my machine and stitched all the way around the edges, and then did some individual stitching kind of based on what the pattern in the background, and we know we had different ones on each of them. So you just use that background print to kind of be your guide. So you can see here my print is 6 by 6 and I ended up really doing about 7.5 by 7.5 for the front and for the back, and my spine is 1.25 inches wide, and I'm going to leave a little space between the spine and that front and the back so that when we get to making the binding, it will open and close really nicely. And once you've decided what your size of your front and back and your spine are going to be, then you can cut a piece of cloth to match. So I just kind of laid everything out. I knew that I was going to do one place for a signature to be in the spine, and I'm going to use some duct tape to actually connect the spine to the front and the back cover. This is just an easy method of binding. You're not going to see this because we're going to cover over it, but it makes a very durable hinge for your spine. And to do that, I cut one length of the duct tape and I put it with the sticky side up, and then I put just about 1/4 inch of that of the front, and then leaving that little gap in between. You want to leave about 1/8 inch gap in between. Then I put the spine down, and then that leaving that gap again, you still have enough room to connect the front. And then I'm going to take a second piece of duct tape and put that over right on top of the tape that I already have down. And this kind of seals it in. It sticks to itself in that hinge, and it's just really, really durable, and will let you open the journal or the mini album if that's what you want to do with it. Just a very durable hinge. And then I'm just going to take my craft knife and cut it off right at the edge there, just to remove the excess. Very simple. Always remember though to be sure and put a little cutting mat underneath you. Don't do that on your craft mat. Okay, so I'm going to do some printing with some rubber stamps, and I don't know exactly, at this point I'm still just kind of thinking through what I'm going to do, but I'm using this metallic gold paint and I'm spreading it on my palette, and you see I've got a key card there. I'm just going to kind of spread it out thinly. Didn't do a very good job of it that time, but you just kind of work it out so that you've got a little bit of space, that you just want a thin coat of it there on your palette. And then I'm going to take these various stamps, and something that I would recommend doing is do a few little test stamps. You didn't get a good view of it, but I discovered that I liked how this stamp, it's just a little circular stamp, it looked when I did, if I stamped off once. You know, acrylic paint does really well with rubber stamps. I don't really recommend it for your photopolymer stamps. I found that they just don't take to it very well, and the paint dries on it and it's not as easy to clean up. But it really is easy to clean up your rubber stamps, because you can just take, particularly clean mounted ones, but even the wood ones, I just take them over to my sink afterwards and just run water over them, and it cleans right off. Now, you want to do that before, you don't want to leave them for days on end, but they are a great tool to use with acrylic paint if you want to do some stamping. So I'm really just kind of making some random pattern. The part over on the right is the front cover, and the part on the back is my back cover. And so I know that my little art quilt from our Gelli print is going to be on the front, so I'm not too concerned about filling in all the space. I'm more interested in just kind of creating some swirlies around the edges. I turn the cloth around, and I'm just looking to fill in space now at this point. When you're stamping with paint, my recommendation is just put your stamp in place and then leave it there for just a couple of seconds, because you actually want the paint to bond with the cloth. So you can see I'm just kind of filling in now with, this is a crown stamp, and I'm looking for some small images to fill in the spaces. And at first, when I was trying to figure out if I liked the crown or not, I stamped it over there inside the area that is going to be behind the Gelli print. Good place to test it and see how it does on the cloth. So once I got the stamped cloth, I set aside and let it dry, and then I cut a piece of batting. Just regular quilt batting will work, and I'm using some score tape here to attach it to the front and the back cover. And what you'll see that I'm doing is I'm just putting a 2-inch wide piece of tape right at the front and the back edge of each cover. I'm not putting any on the spine. I want it to be able to breathe a little bit. We're going to put our little eyelets in there for our signature, and so that'll be enough to hold everything in place there. But by putting this down on here before we bring the cover in, it's going to keep the batting from moving around too much. And I had done a rough cut, and then I just used my fabric scissors and trimmed it up so that it's got a nice even edge. And then now it's time to kind of center our piece of paper, our piece of cloth over our cover. And you can see I left myself plenty of room all the way around. And when you determine what the size of your finished book is going to be, add 2 to 3 inches on either side, just to make sure that you've got what you want. Now you see I did go and I actually sewed our Gelli print to the front cover. I didn't really want to glue it. I didn't want to count on tape. So if you have a sewing machine, that's a great way to attach it. You could use some fabric glue if you are not a seamstress. I'm using some score tape there, and that's how I'm going to bring the material up and around and hold it in place. So I just want to be kind of careful, just keep checking to make sure you've got it centered. At least the front cover needs to be centered really well, because that's your print's going to look funny if it isn't centered on the cloth. So take your time there, and when you have it in place, I would recommend putting that corner, that edge down first. If you have a lot of excess cloth, go ahead and cut that off. and then also cut diagonal pieces off of the corners. That'll help you have a nice little clean edge when you fold them over. So now we're going to bring the back edge in, and you want to bring this kind of taut. You don't want it to be super loose. So then we'll work from the bottom, bring that up onto the tape, and then bring the top down, and really working on the spine to be nice and tight. Just bring that around. If you need to trim it a little bit, you can do that. We're going to put some paper to cover up these edges, so I just kind of use little pieces of tape to get everything down nice and tight. And close it up and check to make sure that it is how I want it to be. And I'm going to go ahead and put my little eyelets in here. And how I did that was I used my Tim Holtz centering ruler, and I found the center and put the 0 on it. And then I took a contrasting Sharpie, which happened to be a silver one, and just marked the points that I wanted to put the holes in. I did a 3/8 hole, and I'm using some gold eyelets. These are We Are Memory Makers, or Memory Keepers. I don't remember who the manufacturer is, but they're their large eyelets, and they're great when you want to put some ribbon, and that's how I'm going to hold the signatures in. I'm going to just do some blank pages on this, and we'll use some ribbon to hold those in place. Now here I am, I'm trying to figure out, I kind of wanted to do a little tufting, meaning that there's that padding on the back of the quilt, on the back of the journal, and I decided that I wanted to use a button or a brad or something that would go in and actually hold the center down and kind of attach it in, kind of like a tufted pillow would be. And so I used my crocodile or Big Bite and put that, and I had a button that has a shank on it, and a shank is, you know, the buttons where they have the little U-shaped place on the back, and so I was able to put it down through that hole that I made, and I'm going to actually take the button out and put a little glossy accents down in there, then put the button back through, and that piece of wire, I'm just going to feed it through the shank of the button, and that will hold it in place. So I found these two pieces of paper that I just think are gorgeous. They're old. They're from my stash. They're by Daisy D's, but they have this very regal looking crest on them. So I cut them down to be my front and back end pages, and I put a large piece of score tape in the center and score tape around all of the edges. And you can see it gives you a very nice finished look to the inside of your journal. And you can put whatever you want to. If you wanted to do a mini album, you could do that. If you wanted to do a journal like mine, it would be a great thing to do. Thought I would zoom in here and let you see some of the hand stitching that I did. You'll notice I just followed along the pattern that was created with the Gelli print. You can see I have the ribbon there in the back. And you can see that little tufted button that I put in there. Just nice little added element. I think the details. I like doing things with details. I think the sequins kind of draw your eye to the stitching, let you know that the stitching is there. I had so much fun making these prints and then turning them into this journal or the cards that I did in the last video. It's just fun to take these very unique prints and turn them into a gift that will never be duplicated. Thanks guys for stopping by. I hope you've gotten some inspiration for your own art, that you'll come back and visit again real soon, and be sure and save some time for creative play.